Hey everybody, Gary with Basecamp Trading. Let's take a look at how we're trading the ES this afternoon. The ES was a little whippy early. It made this big push up in the overnight and then it started to fall. And then we left this big bottoming tail with a hammer at the top here. You can see bottoming tail, the body of this bar was all buying, and that actually triggered back to the upside a little bit, but didn't get a whole lot of follow through, pushed down, bounced off the 50 EMA. The 50 EMA is always a sticking point for these markets. This really tends to be significant support and resistance, and you can see we broke under it, back above it, touched it, back above it, touched it again, back above it. Actually broke under it here, went back above it on this bar, broke under it, back above it, and then finally broke to the downside. But it was right in here where things started to look significantly more bearish. We had this bar right here, pushed a little bit higher, but with no real follow through. And then the next bar caused the 5 and 13 to cross to the downside. It was a really bearish bar. And then the ES just proceeded to head south for the afternoon. In the way we were trading that on our smaller time frame charts was actually two different ways. We had our Unirenko chart, which is our primary chart, and you can see right here we actually broke out of short-term compression to the upside. We had a line drawn in right here at these power lines, another line drawn in here at these power lines, and we actually broke out to the upside. But then we went right up here into resistance and failed. And we pulled back, set up the trend reversal breakout, and then that's what started our trend in the other direction. And you can see we had a trend reversal breakout right here. We had a higher high. We had a pivot. It wasn't a lower pivot low, depending on how you look at it. The previous pivot low was either back over here or down here, depending on how you want to look at pivots. But either way, it wasn't a lower pivot low. This was a lower pivot high, and then we broke to a lower pivot low. So we triggered the trend reversal breakout. We broke out of the cloud, pulled back into the cloud, set up one of the trades that we really like. We like it when it breaks the cloud with trend, makes the pullback, makes a wick out of the cloud to the downside. That was actually good for 3 targets to the downside. And then we went into this short-term compression again, and we put our channel line in right here, and you could see we were bouncing off of support right here and bouncing off of this channel line several times. We came back up here, set up the wick out of the cloud. That was the aggressive entry. We take the wick out of the cloud. We needed to make sure that we were going to get through this compression zone, though, if we were really going to go lower. The more conservative entry was the break of compression, and then the ES just headed south. We made a nice push down, pull back, another potential entry on a wick off the 18. Our initial downside target was actually 33, 37 and 3/4. We actually broke through that by a little bit, ended up bouncing right here off of 33, 45 and a half. And then the ES actually kind of pulled back and eventually, before the day was over, went even lower. So the ES was real bearish in the afternoon, but we're playing the original trend reversal breakout and the compression break to the downside. The other chart that we had that was showing this same type of a setup was right here with our 5-minute chart. Our 5-minute chart, this is where we had a 5-minute trend reversal breakout to the downside. This was the compression right here. We broke out a compression on our 5-minute chart. The 5 and the 18 had already crossed to the downside. Price had broken underneath the cloud. We made this initial push down, pulled back, went into some short-term compression. Then we broke out a compression to the downside with a really strong bearish bar. You can see this bar opened right here, a little wick at the top, and then broke out a compression with a nice bearish body. Closed under compression, and then the ES proceeded to go ahead and head lower. So a couple different ways to trade the short side of the ES this afternoon.